What is up, everybody? Mr. Curtis here. Welcome to this unit on the second to last unit on global end of imperialism, nationalism increasing. In the last video, we talked about India or South Asia getting their independence, partition, split, India, Pakistan. This section is on the Middle East. Same kind of idea. There's a lot of nationalism going on. We're seeing the end of imperialism. We're seeing different nationalist movements rise up. We got kind of 3 or 4 different areas we're going to get into, so let's do this. So first kind of place, this is, if you don't know, this is the Middle East. This is generally referred to as the Middle East. If we go back to the last video, Pakistan and India are a little bit over this way. Going up here is into Russia and some former Soviet areas. Europe is over this way, and then Africa is down here. So this is the Middle East. This is as it looks today. And not necessarily as it looked in the early 1900s. So here's kind of the first thing. And really to understand what's going on in the Middle East today, you really have to go back to the creation of Israel. And in the late 1800s, early 1900s, as nationalism is on the rise, as people are trying to demand their own country, and this goes back to earlier videos like the causes of World War I, et cetera, there's a movement which is across the world of Jewish people who want their own country. And this movement of Jewish people desiring their own country has a specific name to it. This type of nationalism has a name, and it's called Zionism. Zion referring to the Promised Land or the Holy Land. And it really kind of takes off from this man named Theodor Herzl. He is right here as well as right here. And this movement really starts in the late 1800s, early 1900s, where Jewish people around the world are saying, we want our own homeland. We want our own country. And remember, this is before World War II and Nazism and the Holocaust. But Jewish people who are saying, we want our own country in the Middle East. We want that land that was promised to us in the Torah, which is around Jerusalem. God promised us that land. We want that land back. We want to move back there. We want to leave Europe and the Americas and go back to our promised land. And they're demanding from European countries who have colonized the world that we want this land back. Right around World War I, there is a document that's published by the British, and it's called the Balfour Declaration. It was really published by it wasn't a king, it wasn't a high-ranking official. It was just it was someone who worked for the government who really writes this declaration or this letter, promising that the British will give Jewish people their own country. And this Balfour Declaration really increases nationalism amongst Jewish people. It's kind of this. It's like the dangling of the carrot to promise them their independence and promise them their own country. And it increases Zionism. It's not approved by the British government. It's not like they're totally behind this creation, but it is. So this is the Star of David, obviously, and Theodor Herzl. So after World War II is over, we're going to see the whole world is kind of outraged that we allowed this horrible thing called the Holocaust to happen. And the Jewish population in Europe decreased by 60%, and it's just a horrendously awful thing. Many Jewish people who maybe survived the Holocaust and survived Nazism in Europe don't have anywhere to live. And as a way to make up for that, and as a way to continue this push for Zionism, a lot of the Western world, the United States, Britain, France, Canada, decide to propose through the United Nations, which is created after World War II, to give the Jews their own country, to give them this promised land. So they're going to push for this country called Israel down here, which is, again, here is Jerusalem, and this area down here, they're going to push for the creation of it. The plan is this. It's called the UN Partition Plan. Again, partition is to split. Similar to India and Pakistan, there's a plan to split Israel between the Jewish people, which is going to be called Israel, and the Palestinian people who are primarily Muslim. There are some Christians and some Jewish Palestinians, but for the most part, Palestinian refers to Arab Muslims in this area. It's an ethnic group. So the plan is to partition or split it between the Jewish state, which is in orange here, and the purple state, which is going to be the Arab or Palestinian state. The problem with doing this is there are other people who live there. So you give the Jewish people this land here in orange, but you're kicking people off of their land. Those people are going to be mad. The Jewish people who are moving in are happy, but the people who live there are upset. And it really kind of starts off this issue between the Jewish people who are going to move there and the Muslim people who have resided there for many years. As a result of this, there is a Palestinian nationalist group that pops up, and they're going to call themselves the Palestinian Liberation Organization, or the PLO. Their main goal is to kick the Jewish people out of Israel, or out of the land that they believe is rightfully theirs, because the Jewish people came in, they want their land back. And this is the Palestinian land in 1948 before the partition. This is what it looked like during the partition. This is in 1967. Egypt tried to help the Palestinians and invade Israel unsuccessfully. So the Israelis took more Palestinian land, and this is what it looks like today. So we kind of went from this to this. A lot of the tension in the Middle East comes from this. The United States backs Israel significantly. We feel them to be our democratic ally in the Middle East. They help us fight the war on terror. We have a close connection with the Jewish people in Israel. The problem with this, and the problem that the U.S. faces today as a result of this, is a lot of countries around here. So coming back here, this is Israel right here. This is the only non-Muslim country. All of these countries here are Muslim. This is the Jewish country. We support this country. And a lot of other countries in the surrounding areas feel that we are on the wrong side of this, because we should be supporting the Muslims who have lost their land and not the Jewish people. So this is the cause of tension as we get into the terrorism in the late 90s, early 2000s. A lot of it comes back to this issue. One last thing, this PLO group does carry out a lot of terrorist acts, or has in the past, some terrorist acts against the Jewish people, like people blow themselves up on trains, in public places, especially in the 80s and 90s. So that's the PLO. Three other places. One is Turkey. They are formerly the Ottoman Empire. After World War I, the Ottoman Empire is broken up. It is broken up into Turkey and a couple other small places, which we talked about after the World War I unit. They were called mandates, a lot of these areas. And again, this is Israel right here. This is Turkey. These areas are going to be controlled by the British and the French. After World War I, this country right here, Turkey, gets their own country. They are made up of Turkish people who are primarily Muslim. And this guy right here, easy to remember his name because his name has Turk in it, Kemal Ataturk. He is the kind of the leader after World War I of this group of this country called Turkey. This is him right here. Their goal is to westernize. They want to modernize. They want to industrialize. This is really a common theme that we've seen throughout this course since the Industrial Revolution. The way he decides to do it is, one, he wants to increase women's rights, which is not really seen as a big deal or something that people push for in a lot of the countries in the Middle East at this time. So women's rights, women can vote, women education, women being able to dress and kind of wear what they want. Number two, create a democracy, allow people to vote for their elected officials. That's very Western. And number three, just to kind of point out, the traditional leaders in the Ottoman Empire don't like him. The traditional religious leaders are really against him. And this is going to be a struggle in Turkey between these modernizers like Ataturk and the old school religious leaders who want to go back to the way things used to be. There's a tension there. That tension still exists today in Turkey between kind of the new school and the old school. Another place is in Iran. Coming back to this, Iran is right here. So we got Turkey, Israel, Iran. And in Iran, in 1979, they have a revolution. This revolution is anti-West. It is led by this guy, Ayatollah Khomeini. Ayatollah is a religious title given to people in Iran. So he's the Ayatollah, which is a religious leader. He's super religious, very what we would call orthodox. What the Quran says is what goes. And what he wants to do is ban all Western influence, ban Western books, ban Western music, ban Western clothing, ban Western language, ban Western everything. So by banning Western influence, he's also going to take away women's rights in Iran. And they lead this revolution, and they make themselves pretty much a Muslim Orthodox country where everything is run by religious officials to implement Islam. We, as the United States, did not get along with Iran. We still do not get along with Iran. As a result of this revolution, we have a lot of tension with Iran. There was a hostage situation in the late 70s, early 80s in Iran where Americans were held hostage. One big fear with Iran is that they are going to gain nuclear weapons, and they don't like us. And Iran especially hates Israel. And one thing Iran has continued to say over and over again is that the Holocaust never happened, as a way to delegitimize Israel's position in the world. And a lot of people kind of look at Iran and say, how can you even say that? That's just ridiculous. So Iran, one last place is Egypt. Egypt is right here. So coming back to our map one last time, Iran, Egypt, Israel, Turkey. And in Egypt, just one quick thing to point out. This comes up on the region sometimes. There's this man named Gamal Abdel Nasser. And when Egypt fights to get their independence, they also gain control back of the Suez Canal, which the British had took during imperialism. And the Suez Canal allows you to go through from the Indian Ocean, which is down here, up into the Mediterranean Sea. It's well traveled. It's great for shipping. People have to pay a lot of money to take the Suez Canal. He takes it back from the British, nationalizes it, meaning the government controls it. They make tons of money off of it. And he is seen as kind of the hero of a lot of people in the Middle East, the person who fought against the British, fought to tell the story, won, successful, all good. Questions, write them down, let me know. Middle East, whoosh, independence, whoosh, nationalism, whoosh. Have a good day.